The question was just posed, and I want to answer it as well. Kate O'Byrne was asked, well, if it weren't for these feminists, then, by golly, where would we be today? Where would women be today? And, Kate, you began your answer that you had learned all these empowering things from non-feminist sources in your life.
Yes, my own personal story is not one of reading The Feminine Mystique and being inspired by Betty Friedan. But even if I did feel more of a sense of real personal gratitude, as many women no doubt do, from the very beginning when I first started debating the Equal Rights Amendment with these women, I, of course, endorsed all of the goals that were a matter of simple justice. I will point out, as did the public broadly. As I said, federal laws were passed outlawing discrimination against women. The fierce male patriarchy did not block those laws, but I always parted ways with them because I never believed marriage was a patriarchal plot. I never believed men and women were interchangeable, and I never believed women's equality rested on the unrestricted right to abortion for 9 months. So even if I felt a great sense of personal gratitude for all of the equality agenda, does that mean that I am obliged to go along with their denigration of marriage and motherhood, with their abortion absolutist stand in their support of Roe v. Wade, or with their notion that there are no innate differences with men and women? Why are you obliged to sign on to the more radical aspects of the feminist movement that remain alive and well?
That's perfect, and I'd like to offer two other thoughts. One is that it's not true that the feminist agenda was equality. The feminist agenda was, I believe, for most of it, it was more anti-male than pro-female.
That has been there since the very beginning. Yeah, now I talk about the consensus agenda, which was the equality agenda. But you're right, from the very beginning, and it has not gone away, which is the point of my book. Robin Morgan, for instance, co-founder of Ms. Magazine, obviously their flagship publication, she told us years ago, quote, "We can't destroy the inequities between men and women until we destroy marriage." I quote in this book the contemporary successors to Robin Morgan, a woman who was called by the Boston Globe the preeminent scholar of the women's movement. When she sees polling data, famous sociologist, very influential, author of 23 books, when she sees polling data on married women who report that they are happily so, which is the state of the majority of married women according to polls, she says that in order to be happily married, a woman must be, quote, slightly mentally ill.
Now, what about, what was the feminist's name, and also regarded as mainstream and critically important feminist, just passed away, who said that all heterosexual sexual intercourse is rape?
Andrea Dworkin.
Andrea Dworkin.
Yeah.
She is taught in law school. She is taught in feminist courses, in women's studies courses. That's anti-male. That's not female equality.
I couldn't agree more. That's why I name them and quote them. This is not a broadside against a noun called feminism. And I recognize that there are self-described feminists who would part ways with the notion that happily married women have to be slightly mentally ill.
Phyllis Chesler is one of them.
Exactly.
She is exposing the movement. But I'd like to give another answer to that gentleman, if I could just have a moment here. And that is that this is the same argument that I've always heard in defense of communists. Well, yeah, Dennis, it's true they did a lot of bad things, but they're the ones who really came out and protected the workers. And they're the ones who really fought fascism.
Therefore, you have to give Stalin's purges a pass.
Well, in effect, but it's not true. You see, workers would have advanced without communism. Women would have advanced without Betty Friedan.
I do make the point, Dennis, in the introduction, that there was a natural evolution going on.
Exactly.
In fact, when Betty Friedan wrote her book, The Feminine Mystique, famously likening a housewife's lot in suburbia to a comfortable concentration camp, at that moment, half of all American women worked outside the home, all by their lonesomes. So there was an evolution going on. It was, I think, fairly jump-started. And
look at the 1950s movies. There were so many feminist themes in 1950s movies. It's not like it was developed all of a sudden out of nowhere.
No, Katharine Hepburn was inevitably...
Yeah, exactly. Yes. We'll continue and take your calls. Kate O'Byrne's book is Women Who Make the World Worse. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show at 1-8-PRAGER-776. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show. Kate O'Byrne is Washington editor of National Review. Her book just published is Women Who Make the World Worse. It's about the feminist assault, the radical feminist assault on our schools, families, military, and sports. And there was an important question, and that's why we devoted so much time. After all, where would we be without the feminists? We gave 3 answers between us, and I hope that they registered. Let's continue here with some of the calls, and I want to talk to you more, but these calls are quite good, actually. Rick in Chicago, you're on with Kate O'Byrne and Dennis Prager. Hi, Rick.
Hi, Dennis. How are you? Love you. Love your show.
Thank you.
I wanted to comment on the textbook thing. My son was doing a report on Benjamin Franklin, and it showed in his textbooks that he actually belonged to the party or the group, the Sons and Daughters of Liberty, and not just the Sons of Liberty, which would be historically correct. And I thought it was interesting that they're actually trying to rewrite history now with the feminist movement.
Are you familiar with that change, Kate?
I'm not familiar with that, obviously, that particular book, but that reflects the California law.
That is amazing. They actually changed the name.
Sure. Because otherwise you're engaging in a stereotype that men played a disproportionate role in America's Revolution.
Yeah, but the thing, of course, is that it's a totalitarian impulse to change history.
The modern women's movement, I point out, is very totalitarian in its
Kate, you will love this, Kate. There was an old joke told by Soviet dissidents. That was my field. That's how I know it. And the joke was, in the Soviet Union, the future is known. It's the past which is always changing.
Oh, wow.
That's what the left does to history. It's been done in my county of Los Angeles, where they have abolished the cross. It was founded by Catholics.
Oh, I remember.
It's founded by Christians, but they removed the cross because they don't like it. So that history of the county has been abolished. Had it been founded by Wiccans, I promise you there would be a Wiccan symbol.
So if history has to be rewritten, which the California regulation demands, so that men and women are represented in 50-50, strict 50-50 quota, you're going to have things like the sons and daughters of
That's right, and then it has to be represented that way. There you go. That is in Chicago where Rick saw that. That's his history book in Illinois.
Right, exactly, sure. As I said, California, as you well know, Dennis, has enormous clout in the textbook business because they buy so many.
Yep, exactly.